This movie is kind of crazy, not gonna lie. Destroy All Monsters was directed by. Oh, wait a minute here. What is that bright light? Is that. There's no way. It's Ishiro Honda! He's back! That's right, baby. Destroy All Monsters was directed by Ishiro Honda, supporting writing from Ishiro Honda himself alongside Takeshi Kimura. We also get the return of the always fantastic Akira Ifukube as our composer, and despite not having Shinichi Sekizawa as one of our writers, we've yet again assembled the heavy hitters of this franchise, bringing back the dynamic duo for a bombastic final chapter to the Showa era. At least that was the intention until Toho said no, we like money and followed it up with All Monsters Attack. Despite this though, we've assembled a beautiful cast of actors for this intended last go at the Atomic Lizard, with names such as Akira Kubo, Jun Tazaki, Yukiko Kobayashi, Yoshi Tsuchiya, Kyoko Ai, Andrew Hughes, Tocharo Togen, Yoshifumi Tajima, Kenji Sahara, Hiyasha Ito, and as always, Haru Nakajima. I will say though, for an intended last go at this franchise, despite the cast being so good and consisting of so many names that we've seen before, it's sort of strange not to see names like Akiko Hirata, Takashi Shimura, Akira Takarata, Hiroshi Kazumi, Kyumi Mizuno, or Yuriko Hoshi. You think that if this was the last intended go at the franchise, you'd invite back some of your major players from the film's past, but that doesn't seem to be the case here, and I just found that to be a bit strange, for me at least. Additionally, I found it strange that this movie yet again gives us narrative whiplash, going back to being centered around a spacefaring adventure with the return of King Ghidorah and a new alien race attempting to use the kaiju in order to take over the planet. We also get some major leaps in world building that happen off screen, like all the monsters being contained on Monster Island, with Mothra being one of them. Yet again, more world building for Infant Island. It also seems like the world now has some joint effort for monster containment, and the monsters themselves are seen as more of a threat now, with in the last film we just saw them treat Godzilla with sympathy and reverence. I don't know, man, this movie's weird. Additionally, it seems as though the film was written with the loosest of ties to everything that came before it, bringing just about every damn kaiju that Toho possesses and having them be here in this film, despite not letting us see those interactions. Again, huge world building opportunities that happened off screen. However, the last one I want to mention here is the return of a certain kaiju, despite seeing them die or disappear from the franchise for extended periods of time, such as Anguirus and Rodan. I'll get into it later, but it's just so strange to see here. Despite all this though, let's get into it. The first thing I really like about this film is the treatment of the monsters. Finally, after some time, it feels as though these kaiju are actual threats again. I know that throughout the Showa era we've seen these monsters take many twists and turns in terms of behavior and treatment. Mainly Godzilla going from villain to hero, then to some sort of villain to sympathetic hero. It's been a mess. However, here in this film, the kaiju feel like kaiju again, having the people of Earth treat them as actual threats by creating this prison on Monster Island. I also like that Mothra is here too. Not only does it further add to the lore of Mothra and Infant Island as a whole, but it makes sense for me from a human perspective. For starters, in my EBITDA video, I went over how I was surprised that the military didn't act sooner, in addition to how we were not shown more invading forces stepping on the Infant Island for its resources or people. We were shown this in some form in the original Mothra film, and then shown it again by displaying the after effects of bomb testing in Mothra vs. Godzilla. But I wish we were shown more of Infant Island's development as its discovery has gone on. Instead, we get this ongoing narrative in the background of all of these films, and it just seems so strange for that to happen to such an important character. However, here, seeing Mothra being moved to Monster Island and away from Infant Island is a move that makes sense to me, and one that I 100% could see the military doing. Not just that, but I could also see this being a move from them to take Mothra away from Infant Island, as a means to leave it defenseless in order to exploit its resources. It's a tragic and fitting move for the plot to pull, and one that places the characters of Mothra and the people of Infant Island in a precarious situation. They're always having this never-ending battle with how they view humanity. Additionally, the same can be said for Godzilla. However, with him, it seems that the mainland of Japan wants to contain him and use him when it's convenient for them, rather than set him free. It's a bit of a shaky viewpoint, especially with what the past films have established. However, it's a viewpoint that makes sense and one that I could definitely see the general public getting behind. Additionally, I also love the formation of the United Nations Science Committee. It feels fitting to finally have a committee that oversees the monsters and all of their doings. Not only did I think that something like this was going to happen sooner, but it's about time that it does. It also makes sense from a world building perspective as well, especially seeing how previous events have led to several alien invasions. Not only is this a great step forward in getting more oversight from the greater powers that be, but it continues to build the lore out for this world, and I really like that. I also really enjoyed seeing all the monsters return here too, even if the ties are very loose and it doesn't fully make sense. It's really cool to see all of the kaiju in one place together, giving the fans so many interactions that we've never seen before. Lastly, it's cool to see Ghidorah return here too, famously having his bus pass taken, fresh Jace creased, his chain copped, and gang stopped into oblivion. Goodbye, villainous creature, we'll never see you again. Fuck. Not only is this fight cool too, but it's great to see everyone come together to get a lick in on this scourge of the universe. Not only is this Avengers Endgame before Avengers Endgame, but it's the cathartic ending we get to this planet's big bad and nightmare on the entire universe. However, despite there being a ton of fantastic concepts and things that I like in this film, although I wish some had come around sooner in the series, there are still quite a bit that I felt were lacking and ruined the movie at several points for me, but the first being the human plot taking over everything. For this being Toho's last intended film in their universe, they sure don't include a lot of their iconic characters within it. Sure, we get the monsters on Monster Island at the beginning, the battle at the end, and then some attacks sprinkled throughout. But for all intents and purposes, this is more of a human film than a monster one. Now, this has worked before, such as in the first Godzilla and Rodan, just to name a few, but here it feels off. Having your universe end off on a note like this just feels odd and not cathartic enough to be the last film in this iconic universe. In tandem with this, the return to space feels like narrative whiplash, because not only have we been playing this game in these films where they want to be a space opera franchise, but then don't at the same time, but it seems that Toho loves these narrative whiplashes, having one film be all in on the idea, to then follow it up with something that's not related to space at all. It's a strange concept and one that is still seen here in this film. In addition to that, having this film possess loose ties to everything that came before it, but still expecting the audience to know the full story of events doesn't help. And look, when you have a franchise that runs this long, things like this are bound to happen, especially when the narrative isn't super tight. I mean, look at Marvel recently pre-Thunderbolts, in addition to the budget issues that Toho seemed to be having at the time. However, what bothered me most despite all of these was the reuse and return of dead kaiju. This threw me off so much. Now, look, I understand that Toho wanted to probably bring back everyone as a celebration of the franchise for the last intended go. However, the revival and subsequent use of dead kaiju after this film feels so off, mainly with Anguirus, who we haven't seen in years. Furthermore, after this film, these kaiju continue to be used and seen, making this film some sort of soft reboot or restart for this franchise, which feels even more strange. This whole movie seems to possess that feeling through and through, and if I had to use one word to describe this film, it would be odd. Despite all these issues though, this movie is still watchable, and one that I did enjoy having on. So with all that being said, I'm going to rank it at a low B tier, right behind The Invasion of the Astro Monster. But with that, I'm closing up the shop. Thank you all for stopping by and having a cup. Let me know what you think about this film and how you feel about its place in the Showa era. As always, I'm looking forward to seeing where these kaiju and their stories go. But once again, thank you for stopping by. And remember, take life one cup at a time. I'll see you guys later.